Good morning. We will call the meeting to order. It's about 7:32, I believe. First agenda item is to welcome Ray to the committee. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us anything about yourself?
Sure. I currently serve as the Regional Director with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation for Western Wisconsin, so that includes Eau Claire County over to the St. Croix Valley. Also previously used to work for the city here and served in a role similar to Jake serving this committee, so it's nice to be back, and thank you for the welcome.
Great. Welcome. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes from last meeting? And if so, if I could get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Jake, are you doing the financials today?
Yep, I can do it. Attached is the RDA budget and actuals report as of October 31st, 2024. This report presents year-to-date budgeting and actual expenditures in the operating budget and the actual expenditures in the capital budget. Revenues, expenditures, and other funding sources are reported once they are realized. Current expenditures are $30,041.89, which are all related to bonds costs and auditing, and $238.94 related to utilities costs on RDA-owned properties.
Any questions for Jake?
Can I ask a new guy question?
Sir can.
The bond issues, were those for RDA projects that are happening this year?
I do not have the answer to that. That would
Okay.
have to be probably a question next month for Corey, just to make
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
And those would actually be related to some of the incentives that were given to some of the projects in the Northwest District.
Okay.
RDA did one specific cash instead of TIF funds, so.
Okay. Okay.
They just kind of rolled it into the city's fund.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, if I could get a motion to approve?
So,
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on to, is there any public comment for items that are not listed as public hearing or discussion? Hearing none, are there any business items with public hearing or public discussion? All right, other business. Jake, is that you?
yep. Morning, RDA. Glad to be in front of you guys all again today. First off, we have a request from Molding Partners to extend an MOU for the Riverside site for an additional 90 days. The last extension was in May, so we're a little over 3 months away from May, but we did have a cancellation of about 3 meetings in there, and we weren't able to get it in front of you at the last meeting last month. With this, just a quick overview. Still going through negotiations and conversations with Molding Partners on the Riverside site. Riverside site is the property just north of the brewing project along Oxford and the Chippewa River in the Cannery District. With this development, I was looking to be between 20 to 23 units, 3-story development with a guaranteed minimum value, I believe around $7 million. Maybe a little north of $7 million. So still in negotiations and conversations with them. With this time in between the MOU extension and in contract negotiations with Molding Partners, they have voiced that they may in the future need to come back and rework their plan for the space. But this 90-day MOU extension would be to still figure out their current configuration for the space. With interest rates, what they currently are, and the project that they have proposed, they're just trying to make the financials work for this location. They've also shown potential interest outside of this project in the Heights location. We have not seen anything come forward for that. But as they are still looking to bring this project forward, there has been other potential development interest in this space. if the MOU wasn't to be extended. We've been shared with us very high-level ideas of a coffee roastery / cafe / co-work space for this area. Again, very high-level idea. The developer would be Hiker's Coffee. They currently have a space in Eau Claire. They just recently are opening up a retail space in the Market on River in Chippewa, but looking to grow their footprint and their production capability potentially as well. But in conversations with them, obviously, we're still in conversations with molding partners. They understand that, but in the future, if the space would become available, they would be potentially interested in the space. I can answer any questions.
Is this like the third extension, or?
This would be the third extension. Yep.
And how many do we allow before we just say no?
We don't have, that is up to the RDA board. In the past with Silver Creek Equity in the Heights, I believe we had 4 or 5 MOU extensions over a 1.5-year timeline. So that discretion currently is up to the RDA board.
I'd probably add for Silver Creek, that was a $36 million project, so the value and the density was significantly higher, so it was a reason there was a few additional extensions.
I just ask because if there is other interest in that area, how long we give them to continue to make their plans, so it's just my comment.
Can I ask a question? Thank you, Chair. And maybe you mentioned this, Jake, but could you just clarify kind of what staff's position is on this, if you think this is a reasonable request, or if staff has any concerns with the extension request?
I believe it's a reasonable request because we're still moving through the conversations. I know City Attorney Nick was working for a while on negotiations between the city and the developer on the space. I don't know if there's a last update on that, but it seems like a reasonable request moving forward. But if plans for the space as they currently are weren't to come forward as the project is outlined, we would not be able to extend the MOU for them to come back with another plan. So this would be for their current plan to see if it could work within that location.
So I think that's my question. You alluded to the fact that their current plan might not be viable. Has that current plan gone through, outside of the RDA, has it gone through the Plan Commission? Is it an approved project?
It is.
It's not even been reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a request to hopefully execute that plan, but if not, they've already started to talk about a different plan.
Potentially for the space, yes.
I would add our conversations with them, density is their concern, getting the numbers to work, so they are contemplating adding another floor to the structure as it was originally presented. In a conversation with Jake and I, they made reference to switching to townhomes and changing density across the whole site, which again is a shift from what was presented. So it would have to come back to the RDA for approval of a change of that significance. It's just trying to make the numbers work with interest rates still high and construction costs. It's not cash flowing the way they anticipated it would when they've been running their budget numbers as presented.
Back to the number of extensions, I think I recall in this, the Silver Creek piece and the number of extensions there, that was one of the questions of how often, how many times do we extend something as a general practice. This seems to be kind of right on the cusp of whether you push it give them another opportunity or not. I'm inclined to do that, given that they're continuing to work and have possibilities for it. but we have to be mindful, of moving forward in terms of the whole cannery district and trying to complete our efforts there and move on to other areas as well. So I would just say, we didn't set a policy. We didn't set kind of a hard line saying, okay, never more than 2 extensions or something like that. But I think we should be, keep that in mind as we go forward and not let things just drag on.
Two quick questions. How much time is left after the 90 days? Is it 90 days from today, or is there a clock from the 90 days that's already started?
It'd be 90 days from when we have a signed MOU
Okay.
a motion from the board and then a signed document with the city and the developer.
Okay. And then can you just real quickly remind me what this project is?
Yep, yeah,
Thank you.
so this is multifamily housing with, I believe it's 6 or 8 commercial locations on the front facing Oxford. They are looking to have 300 square foot maker spaces on the Oxford facing portion of the building. 20 to 24 units, parking on the interior. Supposed to be kind of that live workspace within the cannery district.
Any other questions? All right, if no other questions, if I could get a motion to extend the MOU with Modine Partners for an additional
moved.
90 days.
So moved.
Okay, can I get a second? All right, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Discussion regarding future RDA sites, areas of focus.
I'll do this might be redundant for a majority of you, but I'll do just a really quick overview and get into more of the conversation aspect. We do have an outline, plus Steve Nick here for any questions, or City Attorney Nick for any questions on the creation or extension of an RDA district. There is quite a few new members here, so I figured I'd do an overview. But the goal would be towards the end of this conversation, which we've had multiple times, to potentially narrow it down to maybe a couple of areas or one area. Staff can do a deeper dive and research into that, and then continue to move this process and progress forward. But just a quick overview. Over the last, I would say, year and a half of me being in this position, kind of running these meetings, we've had quite a few conversations about potential RDA focus areas. In the past, we've been working within the Cannery District and within the North Barstow District. North Barstow District, just about out of lots there, if not out of all the lots. Potentially the liner site may be still available, and then in the Cannery District, also running out of land for redevelopment. So we've been looking at other areas to either extend those districts or to look at other areas of focus. So this is just a brief overview of the different areas that we've talked about. And they're in reverse of how we've presented them. So the last one that we talked about a couple months back would have been the broader RDA district. With this, the focus would have been a little bit more different than what RDA is focused on in the past. RDA focused on specific, typically industrial area, looking to get it more to a mixed-use development, looking at blighted properties, redeveloping those, having public-private partnerships, and creating redevelopment. For this, a little bit more of a focus on creating possibly affordable housing. This is an idea born out of some research out of Oshkosh and a couple of other municipalities around the state of what they're doing to create affordable housing, and looking at all tools that we can create that, and potentially using the RDA if they would like to do that to perform that mission. With that, the broader RDA district would potentially look at the entire city of Eau Claire boundaries. We'd look at the non-conforming lots, look at infill development of lots that are underutilized, looked at poor housing conditions and underutilized space such as parking lots or other public spaces that aren't currently being used. Opportunities for this would be clear out blighted structures for infill development to have some more organic growth within the potential neighborhoods. And then do more of a selective redevelopment instead of a scrape and clear of an entire area. Next would be the south of Lake Street expansion. This again has a little bit more of a housing focus based on how it was originally presented. Within this space, there'll be some pictures next, but there is some non-conforming lots within this space. There's also been conversations of if this was a space to move forward, whether or not to have the YMCA location included in that in previous conversations, because that is a massive structure that is along the river, but there may be potential development occurring within that space without the RDA needing to take any action. Other things occurring within the space, there's poor conditions, housing conditions, as well as a high ratio of rental to owner-occupied and unused parking or blighted space. A couple examples of that is the it's a old dry cleaner area. This is kitty corner from the YMCA on Graham Ave, right behind Sojourner House, and then another active business but dilapidated, blighted property within the district. The Cannery District extension. The last two districts would be creating a new district. This would be an extension of the current district. So outlined on the right along the Triple River would be the current Cannery District. The proposed map to the left would be a potential expansion of the Cannery District. The approximate area would be about 48 acres. Currently, there's quite a bit of different land uses within this space. There's some I-2 zoning up what we consider north of the Cannery District. There's an old meatpacking plant. Now it's Wisconsin HVAC. There's some C2, some shopping districts within there. Other blighted structures currently within that district and some non-conforming lots. Potential opportunities here would be the clearing and blighting, the selective process of blighting or removing some of the blighted properties, creating that a little bit more of that organic redevelopment through selective redevelopment from the RDA of removing some of the blighted properties. Some of the sites that we mentioned, we've got the I-2 building on the top left and one of the commercial buildings on the bottom right. The southwest quadrant industrial area. This is a little bit more common to the RDA and what they've done in the past. This is approximately 192 acres, what's within that red area. Not necessarily all of it could or would potentially be within an RDA district based on conversations we would have to have or have had with property owners down in that district. Currently, it's all industrial land. There's a gravel sand pit or mine pit down there. It's I-2 zoned. It's one of our few I-2 zoned areas throughout the entire city. It has floodplain issues. There's commercial. It has potential for mixed redevelopment within this area with commercial and residential within here. And there's surrounding residential and commercial surrounding this proposed district. Some photos of the sites. Former Shopko Plaza. This has been one of the original conversations that we've talked about quite a bit and extensively. Approximately 32 acres. The Shopco facility itself and the surrounding parking lot is obviously being redeveloped into the 955 apartments. So there is good organic growth happening within here, as well as the Howard on the east side of this property. There has been new development with this. One of the main conversations was surrounding the strip mall location and the oceans of parking lot surrounding it. With the conversation with the RDA, they've always wanted us to keep it on the map for conversation, but there has been good development happening with the space already, so it hasn't been one that's been at the highest priority of the RDA in the past. Like I mentioned, poor site layout, poor site access. Another example of blight within the space is poor city planning. So road access, moving through the space, parking, everything with this space. Some site photos of the parking lot. North Barstow District expansion. So this would be another expansion of our current North Barstow District. This is the current North Barstow District. There would be a potential expansion either eastward of Barstow. Yep, eastward of Barstow, between Galloway and Wisconsin Street. There's quite a few one-story, potentially dilapidated, empty gravel parking lots and dilapidated buildings within this space. There has been great momentum moving from the Chippewa River west to east, and a majority of that has stopped at Barstow Street, so this would be a potential expansion to the eastward of that redevelopment, as well as the conversation of a northward expansion. So this is where we really started the potential of the RDA looking at residential selected blight redevelopment. Within this area, there's a high ratio of rentals. There still is / was a couple buildings up in this area that were burnt out and boarded up. And there's unused space and non-conforming lots within this potential area as well. So those are just an overview of different districts that we've looked at. If there's any questions, I can go next before I go into kind of how you created or extended RDA district. I can answer those at this time.
I've got a couple of questions. So one question I have would be, you know, the idea, which we've talked about before, of the broader RDA district, and this might be a question for City Attorney Nick, would these other potential projects that have been identified by staff, by this authority, be like able to be achieved within that broader RDA district, or would the broad one be, I know that there was language on the slide and we've talked about it would be really specific, I think, to single family residential would be the idea, or would we be able to fit in all of these other smaller pieces into that broad district as well? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The broad district's an interesting one. I think it's a bit of a creative extension of what RDAs are allowed to do, and in discussions with Oshkosh, they're not entirely sure how they did it. It's been a long-standing one, but for it to potentially be allowed, it would have to be pretty specific on the purposes of use. So the way Oshkosh is using it is they have a fairly high number of residential properties that are going through foreclosure, that are on tax liens, that are boarded up and unoccupied, and so they have that citywide authority, but they're focused on that particular mission. There's nothing in the law that says it's got to be specific to residential, and I'm not even sure if Oshkosh is specific to residential, but that is one of the things they're dealing with. It could be long-standing vacant commercial properties or industrial properties potentially as well. But the challenge to meet the law is there is still a geographic definitional requirement to it. There's certainly a factual underpinning that you have to go through and find, both as an RDA and as a city, and that includes a finding of blight throughout the area. Some cities, and I'm not intimately familiar with Oshkosh, but there's been a number of communities, on a nationwide scale, cities like Dayton, Ohio, or Detroit was certainly a poster city of this, unfortunately, where they had the factual underpinnings of large portions of their community basically being in states of blight where they needed to adjust and kind of correct the amount of housing that they had to current needs. I don't know that factually exists in Eau Claire, and that work just honestly hasn't been done to date to show that we would have the factual basis for something like that. We don't see those numbers of foreclosures or tax liens in our community happily, and I think ultimately it'd be a legislative finding and a legislative policy determination here of whether that is a need through our community. But as I was talking to Mr. White yesterday briefly, I mean, and again, you'd have to make your own evaluation, but to my observation, just being here about 25, is the areas that the RDA and the city have focused on in redevelopment have really caused spin-off positive growth in a lot of the residential neighborhoods that were the most problematic for this type of issue. I mean, when I came here, I was filing raise orders, actions against certain landowners, landlords that own dozens of properties in our downtown and immediate areas, and areas generally outside of what are the RDA districts, because the properties were that dilapidated. It's not that doesn't exist at all, but it exists, at least just to my observation, to a dramatically less degree. And I think because of what the RDA and the city has invested within the districts that it is focused on, that then you've had the private positive redevelopment in the other areas. It is an interesting option. It's one that, again, you'd have to make a finding that the entire geographic area that you declare would be blighted. Citywide might be a bit of a reach, but even identifying an entire neighborhood based on our conditions might be a bit of a reach. But it is possible, and at least one other community is doing it, so we've presented it to you as one of the options. And again, if it's utilized, a little bit wrapping around to I think your point, it would have to be drafted in a way that made it clear, again, that geographic area is broad, but the purpose is very specific, so it's clear that it would not be a mission to, in essence, try to redevelop every property in the city, but focused on ones that were standing vacant or other similar indications of blight, which would mean that if you try to utilize that on a broader basis, you would still likely want to consider one of the other districts that would be a more, I think, traditional use and narrow the geographic footprint, but identify truly the entire area as blighted. And even when you do those sort of things, it doesn't mean every property within it has to be blighted. I mean, we frankly went up to the Wisconsin Supreme Court on that issue with the downtown redevelopment of having a blighted TID, and there was an argument that somehow it was illegal, it was unconstitutional to redevelop our downtown because plaintiff claimed you could sort of cherry pick certain properties and they weren't blighted, and the court didn't buy that, and I think quite correctly, because that's not what the law requires. It's an overall determination that the area is in need of redevelopment, and fundamentally that's a legislative determination, and the court agreed and deferred to city council, and I think frankly to considerable positive effect on the downtown. If you recall what our downtown looked like in 2000 compared to what it looks like now, but that sort of effort, if you want to try it, you could do both, because they'd be very different types of districts if you attempt that sort of broader citywide concept.
Thank you. Is it okay if I ask a couple other follow-ups? I hope, these ones I think are more brief questions. So throughout this presentation, right, there's reference to non-conforming lots, and I'm just thinking about the ongoing effort that council is, undertaking right now with respect to zoning, and understanding what a non-conforming lot is today might be different in a year's time. So I'm just wondering if staff could help us understand how that might change or how that might affect things or not affect things.
Certainly, I'd be happy to take that one because we're looking at that heavily on the planning and inspection side. Jake, if you could flip to the North Barstow District slide. There's probably some of the best, and the one north of William Street. Mm-hmm. Some of the best examples of that are in this district here. What you see particularly off 4th Street, which also has added issues of being in floodplain, but as you move to the east, a number of those lots, they are narrow and long. Currently don't meet code. A number of those lots, even with the proposed zoning changes, we're reducing setbacks, we're reducing minimum lot sizes. Even with the proposed code changes, there's still a number of the units in that district will still be non-conforming. There's a number of units where they're built on the lot line. They're built with less than 5 feet of space between the two houses, period, let alone the 5 feet per setback per property line, which would be 10 feet of space. Some of these buildings don't meet building code. They would have been built old enough and long enough that if you use the right material, you can actually have 3 foot of space between, or even an air gap between buildings if they're built right with the right materials from an inspection site. There's some of these that are that close but aren't built with the appropriate material for fire barrier and prevention. So it will clean up a number of non-conforming issues, in particular in several historic neighborhoods, but this neighborhood is a prime example. It will not clear out a lot of those issues. A way to address that would be if 2 properties came for sale, the RDA could acquire both, clear both, and then offer it out for a combined lot that would meet lot sizes and accept proposals for affordable housing replacements to do something like that.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one final question, and then I'll turn it over to others. The other thing that I thought of as we were going through the different potential RDA focus areas would be with respect to actually, so the North Barstow area and then also the south of Lake Street area. Wondering if there's any thought that has been given, and the timelines probably won't match up properly for this, but there's conversations obviously about the Day Resource Center in our community, or I think maybe it's been rebranded to the Community Resource Center. And just wondering if there's any thought about those two, the RDA's focus areas, the potential to think about that Day Resource Center or Community Resource Center project as well through any of this.
I'll take that one as well. So Western Dairyland and their partner are actively working on a space. It's not widely known. They're not advertising or publicizing it yet because they're still going through their process, but there is a location that's been identified. They're building their budget and their plans around it. So if that succeeds and moves forward, and we expect to hear them make some announcements in the next few weeks, might be potentially first quarter of next year, their process will alleviate the need for the RDA to step in and take any type of role to facilitate that type of a structure.
I have one question, and I think as we look at all of these, the question is, and I think it speaks to Steve Nick's comments of the changes that we've seen in downtown, right? As we talk about some of these extensions of some of the places downtown, there appears to be significant interest already from developers, right, because of the work that has gone on. I think they have 2 questions really here. Is one, obviously knowing the RDA's financial constraints and the dollars we will have available to use in properties. One of the questions I'm going to ask as you kind of narrow this down is, what's the staff's recommendation? Because obviously the one thing we'd like to do is have properties that quite quickly we could put on the market and quite quickly see some turnaround on the financial aspects. So as much as we might love all of these, the question really is which one seems to make the most sense, understanding the RDA's financial constraints and understanding the direction that we're headed? Meaning some of these might just develop now because you have developers interested. Does the RDA need to even step in? Or is there a bigger opportunity where the RDA has to step in order to get the properties ready to put on the market?
It's a great question. I think leading to the narrowing down from the RDA and recommendations is kind of what we're looking at, because there's been on all 5 of these good base level knowledge brought together, looking at different blighted areas. But really the conversation is, if there's going to be one or if there's going to be multiple, is the RDA interested in moving slightly away from what they've been doing with more of the industrial redevelopment into mixed use, and move more into what you would say the selective redevelopment of a neighborhood area, a blighted neighborhood area, is kind of where the question is. Based on Mr. Nick's comments earlier, it would have, from my staff perspective, would have made sense to do more of a broader RDA district where you can do some more selective housing redevelopment, and then do something more traditional like the Southwest Quadrant, where you can get more of that cannery district feel, more of that redevelopment. But also there, the process is whatever district we select, or if we want to extend with that, we would put in a CIP request in next year's budget. So really, the project is budget CIP dependent on what amount of funds we would have to work within a district. So moving fast, buying properties really is kind of dependent on having access and being allowed to purchase the properties as well. So
I'd say from a tactical standpoint, some of the districts, like if you look at the I-2 location that was identified west of Shopko, that's a cannery district type of redevelopment. You're talking 15 years of acquisition within the cannery district and clearing before they really moved any sites forward. It was a long-term process. That site's going to mirror what happened in the cannery district very closely. A lot of those spaces are not for sale currently. The gravel mine's likely going to play out at some point in time, and then they'll probably shut it down on their own. But if they can get another 10 years of aggregate out of there to make their product, it may be 10 years before they decide they're ready to sell. We will be going through a comprehensive and land use plan review starting next year. Our plan may change relates to that area. I don't think it will, but it might. And currently we identify it as medium to high density residential moving forward, but maybe that shifts, and that shifts what the RDA would be looking to do in a district like that. Shopko is kind of taking care of itself in that area. The strip center is still an issue, but there is within the TID plan a mechanism and an identification to do development through there that could move even that redevelopment forward within TID 16. So probably maybe not as critical. As Jake pointed out, there's the broad district has a lot of appeal to be able to, we've placarded, between the health department inspections, placarded 5 houses this year so far. It's varies. Sometimes we do more than that, sometimes we do less. Prime example is a house by Mount Washington, 3 years arrears in property tax. They're paying just enough to keep it from going to sheriff's sale. Tree limb fell through the roof, hole in the roof. They did nothing. We ended up raising it. We put in a raise order. We raised it. So that cost that we absorb gets put back on their property tax, but they're not paying their property tax anyway. So it will set as an empty lot, whereas had the RDA a broad district, that would be a parcel that the RDA could negotiate to acquire, remove the blight itself, and then spin it out for an affordable housing development. Duplicate that in spots throughout the community with vacant homes, which we're in the process of trying to put together a listing of how many vacant homes are just sitting there unused. Grandma passed away and the grandkids got the house and they haven't set foot in it in 6 years, but it's still theirs and they still pay the tax, and it's slowly falling apart, but nothing's happening with it. that's a mechanism to maybe move something like that forward. So it definitely has some appeal to do that. The extensions of the existing districts would probably provide some faster movement. There are some very specific targets in those areas that can be pursued quickly, and some of them have indicated a willingness to sell within the next few years. So there's some opportunity to maybe move faster in some of those areas. And obviously, small compact districts that are defined, there's an opportunity to watch the markets. An example, Jake brought it to our attention 2 years ago. 3 properties came up for sale within this North District extension. These 3 properties were owned by folks who are less than stellar property owners in that area for rental units. Would have been ideal to acquire those 3, clear them, and do something better for them. They were some of the worst in this area. We didn't have a means to acquire them. It was not in our district, didn't have funding mechanisms ready to go. So they sold to somebody else, and I don't know if the condition of those spaces has improved or not, but the capacity to act quicker in those types of situations would be of benefit and could help remove some of the blight in some of these defined areas. And then some of the other ones, like the South District that Jake pointed out, there's one specific target that was been brought to the attention of staff to look at with the dry cleaner that's been vacant for years. They know there's issues in it. That's why they don't do anything with it, because dry cleaners almost always have brownfield issues with the processes they used in years past. So, that's the type of structure RDAs were created for, to go out to remove the blight, remove the issues, and then spin it back out for development. So there are definitely some prime targets in I guess you could say either of those 3 districts, the South Lake District, the North Barstow extensions, and the Cannery District extension. Long-term, how many are in there, it's hard to tell. These are areas that all meet blight criteria. They have high rates of poverty. They have obviously have some structures that have issues. They have high rates of crime. So they tick a number of the boxes that make them eligible to be considered as RDA potential venues. And Jake will be going over some of that and later in the presentation as well. I don't know if that was helpful or not.
Give you my quick take. I've shared this with RDA as well. Try to be brief, but my suggestion is you try to focus on districts that are at least primarily commercial or industrial. So when some of these came up before with residential focus, it's not that that's impossible, but it's challenging. It's challenging on a number of fronts. First of all, just your authority or any public entity's authority in Wisconsin to acquire residential properties, at least by eminent domain or involuntary basis, is limited. A lot of the properties, as Aaron was just indicating, may come up voluntarily, which is different. But even so, the ability to acquire, maintain current tenancies, find alternate housing for those tenants, it's challenging and expensive. So in the 2 districts that we've had, there were relatively few residential properties, and the ones that we encountered were by far the most involved, certainly in the Cannery District. We only had a couple, most notably in the area that's now the current in the eddy. Others had some people living in them, but not legally. So that sort of work is important work, but it's challenging. So you just know if the RDA is going to get into it, it's going to take a different level of focus. And I think that work is needed in our community. I think happily it's not needed to the same extent as some other communities. I think that we don't really have as effective one as we perhaps would like, but I think it is work that is better, more easily done by a private land trust. They don't have the same public restrictions on acquisition of land or on relocation of tenants, and can move with private funds much more efficiently and to maintain the property in a trust situation. So it doesn't mean that we can't do it. It's just very difficult, and when we have done it in the past, it has challenged staff. We are not staffed in the RDA. I mean, this is basically the staff. so we do not have property management people on hire like a land trust would. So it's a different process acquiring commercial or industrial. They're either vacant already, or you move the commercial or industrial tenant, and you just have to manage the empty building. Much easier to do. So when I look at these lists, I think there's really two primary options. You either moderately, and in some cases very modestly, extend your existing districts, and you're really making the policy decision of can we add value and move that process forward, or have we done enough in these areas that it's going to happen already? We've already really seeded this enough, and some of these near spaces we think will pop on their own. Where in these districts otherwise, again, going back to my previous comments where you had some of the naysayers that we shouldn't do anything about it, like, you've had decades to buy this land. The private owners that have sat on it have had decades to do something with this, and they haven't. And the community doesn't ultimately have to continue to accept that forever, that our downtown is just that impaired. So I think looking at similar scenarios in our community, ultimately that you've got to give us that policy direction on. Potentially some of those little tweaks right around our existing districts, or I don't know, to me the area that stands out is, we were also talking about, both Jake and Aaron, is where we term that southwest area, or I think you could also look at it from other things that have happened more recently with our hospital closure of, a Claremont corridor concept of, is that a key commercial and industrial, but commercial area in our community that needs attention. Happily, the Shopko site itself has redeveloped privately. Again, I think it's remarkable and speaks to how dynamic economically and socially Eau Claire has been in the last 10 to 15 years, that it drew that sort of substantial out-of-area private development to take on that project on its own. I mean, there's no city dollars in that. It's remarkable. Public dollars of any sort. But you still have this site that's identified, and I would suggest, because again, since, as Jake was saying, these were presented over the last year and a half, so things have happened. So you could adjust that to include perhaps part of the Shopko site. You've also had changes over on the 37 Claremont intersection that have changed what we anticipated to happen with that property. You've got some Larson property that still has further redevelopment, after they tore down Green Mill, and was that a Holiday Inn there? And then you could potentially cross the 37 to portions of that Shopko Plaza site, or even some of what we've called the EdMed district in previous. And if you really kind of focus as a linear concept, you could even cross the Chippewa and potentially hit some of those Menominee and Claremont fronting properties that may organically develop on their own with Sonantag up and running a little bit longer, but so far have resisted that. And I think you certainly have a much higher potential of development at and around that intersection with substantial community interest. I mean, the city and our taxpayers, and through general tax revenue, TID, and room tax, put $14 million into the Sonantag Center, in addition to the substantial private donations of the Sonantag family and others. So we've got a lot in on that one too, and there's a TID in that district, so there's reasons to want to make sure that area is maximized. So to me, of all of them, that's the one that jumps out as what would qualify as blight and be of major long-term economic importance to the city and the Chippewa Valley.
One question, Jake, and maybe it was answered already, but when you touched on this briefly, you mentioned that maybe not everything in this could go or could be part of the district or would come into the redevelopment. Was that simply referring to the gravel pits and
Yep, based on
saying we
timing.
want to continue? Okay, so yeah, This one, to me feels to be more one of those transformative areas, much in the sense of the Cannery District. There obviously would take some time and take a lot of effort over that time to kind of envision what would be there and so forth, but it can change a whole sector of the city and connections there where some of the others couldn't. And then as we factor in the staffing issues with some of the residential focus or potential residential focus, that this seems to be a better fit in that regard as well. Still would like to see, with respect to the Shopko side of things, mention of some of the issues of access and traffic and planning around that. If that continues to be viewed as an issue, I would see that as kind of being an extension, if we could kind of extend, or whether the hospital and those pieces could tie in as well. But if that's what it takes, from a city RDA perspective to make the Shopko area, more feasible, I'd still lean in that direction as well as including that.
Thank you. Sorry, excuse me. A couple of quick questions. Just again, new guy. When I saw the title of South of Lake Street, the map that came up was not what I expected. Was there previous consideration for the south of Lake Street in what we would call the Water Street neighborhood from, say, Half Moon Lake to the Chippewa River? Has that been considered as a potential space?
Can you say the direction again? South
So,
of?
so south of Lake Street, I was just saying
Menominee.
that this isn't what I expected. It was more of the Half Moon Lake, south of Lake Street over to the Chippewa River.
Yeah, it's been a conversation, but nothing, not something that we proposed because it was heavily residential. And I believe you're talking about the historic Randall Park neighborhood.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's.
Yep. So there's been ongoing conversations about that, but none of those conversations have really made it to the RDA for being a potential blighted area. There's a lot kind of happening within that area, or conversations within that area.
Okay.
I'd add, we have talked in particular in reference to TID 12 about some of that area of Randall Park on the south end of that, and the potential even for looking at maybe the TID needs to be extended to help do some redevelopment in there. Some of what we're doing right now is looking at Station 955's impact. Their target market for Station 955 is college students. That's what they built the facility for. That's what they're intending to market to. They were about a month and a half off this year on their construction timeline, so they didn't hit the timing very well. But their intent is to fill that thing with college students in the next turnover round. If that occurs, historic Randall Park neighborhoods is one of the areas we think you're going to see a drifting out of, coming to this other option for student housing. So we want to look at the impact. Do we see properties coming up that might be able to convert back to single-family homes that are currently student rentals in that region? The redevelopment or the neighborhood association has a housing grant program that they are looking to initialize. It is funded by TID increment from TID 12, which currently there is very little increment coming into that district because of the way one of the large developments that occurred there ends up being structured as a nonprofit, so there's no tax increment coming off of it, or very little. But when funding is available within that district, they have some programming that they're working on that can help drive some of that as well internally. And the area north of Sonnentag we also looked at as well. I think we're going to see that area redevelop, that strip along Menominee Street as it heads towards Claremont. Right now it's a matter of pricing. There's gold, oil, and I don't know what other precious metals are under some of those shops on that strip, because their asking prices are in the millions at this point in time, with Sonnentag glowing on the other side of the street. I think when they realize that that's not the market dynamics now. And we have a number of developers that we've identified that are looking at those areas heavily. I think some of those regions will develop on their own, and will move forward. And the zoning code will change, so a lot of those projects, a lot of those areas will likely, after the zoning overall, be non-conforming uses, and will change as ownership change or as the buildings change. We'll see that drift back to what we intended to be moving forward.
Related to historic Randall Park. Thank you. Related to historic Randall Park, and just kind of referencing the neighborhood, I'm also inclined to be interested in that Forest Street neighborhood for a redevelopment district. But that goes to what sort of neighborhood input has there been in some of these as we look at the residential neighborhoods? Again, maybe that's happened already. Is there support or is there interest from the neighborhood in the RDA getting active in these areas?
Yeah, we went out about a year and a half ago and met with the neighborhood association north of Madison Street, so up in that Forest Street area. And they actually walked us around and showed us blighted houses and said they were definitely interested in the potential of this idea.
Okay, great. And then just kind of looking at the minutes from the last one as it relates to the EPA grant and the work that's being done there, is there kind of a tie with, I think, Walter's Brewery site that's in that same, is there kind of consideration of how we can kind of build all these?
Yep, we would look at that.
Okay.
That's why Connie's on the board, Dave's on the board, Aaron. So we're looking at it from the RDA perspective on if that's a tool that we can use when looking at the Walters Brewery or other locations around town. So we're definitely looking at that as one of our tools to address or look at the brownfield sites, see if we can do research on the space and redevelop those.
Nice.
Yep, the EPA has already approved it as one of their approved potential uses of environmental investigation funds.
Cool. Great. Thanks.
Go ahead.
One last technical question. Is there a benefit to extending a district versus creating a new one?
There is not a legal difference in creating them, so it's really, again, that policy choice that I think all of our comments are trying to present to you. It doesn't mean you can just do one of them, but right, do you see the drive, energy, the needs of our community on redevelopment to incrementally expand one of the existing, or is there a new need somewhere else, which is more compelling, as others have noted, with pretty limited, funding, no really ongoing funding mechanism. You can create as many as you and council are willing to create, but the funding is going to be fairly, constrained. And as I think, Aaron had indicated, and certainly I've worked through. I mean, these two have been very successful, but they were, really about a 30-year process. I mean, I've been here for 25 of them, but the North Barstow was already created, when I was here got here, and a fair amount of the parcels had already been acquired. No redevelopment had happened, but the pieces had started to be put together, I'd say, for at least a 5-year period before that. So, and the funding really hasn't dramatically changed for you all, unfortunately. That would be a downside risk of identifying too many. But really, that's, I think, the main policy direction we're looking for. Do you see one of these as a really compelling need to add on, or is there another, section of town that we should maybe start focusing on?
Can I ask a clarifying question? I'm just wondering, from staff's perspective, kind of what you're hoping to get from RDA this morning. Are you just hoping for this discussion? Or are you looking for direction? What is your
I
need?
think we've gotten some good direction, but definitely looking for direction. Based on the comments, I was going to go over kind of what it takes to outline to either extend or create, and you've kind of already hit on some of the metrics. You're asking questions around that. So based on the comments and the feedback that we've received so far, if you're interested in the Southwest Quadrant and say the map's outdated, we worked on that about a year ago, our next steps would be to do a deeper dive into hopefully either one or two, whatever your direction is, So with that, come back at potential meetings, if that's one you selected, we could look at different variations of the map, because we would need a map to define the space and what we're actually looking at. So if we wanted to extend it down the Claremont corridor, if we wanted to go across the Chippewa River to Menominee Street, that would be the next probably movement. Look at address, we'd look at actual parcel by parcel. We'd look at valuation. We'd look at pretty much every factor to make sure it meets the blight. Then we'd kind of go down that process and bring that back and say, in a future meeting, okay, RDA, this is what we found within this district that you recommended that we take a deeper dive into. Would you still like to move forward with this? So if there was two, we could do that on multiple. If one's an extension, one's a creation, that would be what I would say would be a recommendation from staff. So we can just take a deeper dive into potentially some that you're interested in, instead of just holistically looking at 5 of them.
Yeah. I would just share with knowing that you're looking for that type of direction, Jake. I think about kind of my perspective, and obviously other RDA members may have different direction or priorities than I do, but I think about the community-wide needs, and one is obviously housing related. And so I know there's, Attorney Nick kind of highlighted some of the challenges with trying to pursue that broad district, but I think I'm still at least interested in that, as it would potentially, thinking about how large our city is, I know that the residential redevelopment can be challenging, but I would think that enough properties would present themselves voluntarily where that might be helpful in, addressing some of the housing challenges that our community is facing. And then the other piece that I think is a huge priority that I've always felt about Eau Claire is our waterfront is so underutilized. And so several of the districts that you've outlined and given consideration for are, adjacent directly or nearby waterfront, but I do think that southwest quadrant industrial area would be of interest to me for that reason. I think there's so much unrealized economic potential for the whole community in that area. So those are my 2 cents.
One of the areas that we haven't even talked about is the Cannery extension, and First Avenue or Street, whatever it is, and the Kessler Park area. I know there's been some private development amongst that area, maybe not in that red line, but I'd hate for us to lose sight of what we have accomplished on Oxford to not even consider that extension area. So I'm inclined to lean more towards that area. I think the Shopko place will take care of itself, honestly. I think developers are going to go in. That's going to be just a long, long process with that strip mall that's there and that owner. I think we can do better work in other areas in a more timely fashion. So, my comments.
If I'm sharing comments, I'll go next. I agree with you. I think the extension here makes sense, and I also think it has the opportunity to have us continue in an area that is needed, that we have development that will happen. I look at the North Barstow extension, I look at Shopko. I think you guys have done such a great job. Those are going to happen. I think they just will. The southwest quadrant's going to take forever. There's no doubt about it. But I go back to Steve's comments. When he showed up here 25 years ago, somebody had started a process that was going to take a while. So I feel like we have to have a twofold approach. That one might take longer. I would like to see with that one, though, the commentary around Menominee Street, which we haven't really explored. What does that part of Claremont look like? Maybe down through the hospital, but I think there is an opportunity, especially with Sonantag. What is that general area right there, right outside of Carson Park and all of that? Is there an opportunity to throw that into whatever this southwest quadrant? But if we're looking for a what can we do quick, I would agree with Connie on the Cannery extension.
I think based on the broader district, I think based on just the staff interest, there's going to be a lot of just constant research on the broader district because housing is such a big topic. So even if it's not necessarily selected as an RDA district, I think there's going to be a lot of constant conversation and probably research happening, even if we're looking at more of a specific extension of the cannery. I think it's going to be more of a holistic look at kind of the community, even when we're diving deeper into that.
I would agree, and Attorney Nick's comments that there aren't a lot of foreclosed properties that the city is holding on to, correct? Is that what, with past due taxes? Because typically when they reach that point, maybe a financial institution is involved that has acquired it, and they're gonna sell it. So, I don't, again, I struggle with that whole concept being an RDA type project, so.
Just real quick, if we're going to rank a little bit, I think this is a great idea. Appreciate your comments on the cannery extension. And then I mentioned Forest Street neighborhood, but then also with the southwest quadrant, I like the energy around that, being along the river, and then with the trails right there. That ties really well into the regional efforts around outdoor recreation. So I think there could be, while it would take a while, but I think there could be a lot of great energy around that space as well, tying into that broader effort. So, thank you.
And I would just say that, like, for myself, I think the Southwest District, I think that's something that all of us won't be here when it comes to fruition, but I think that's something that is just so much potential with, you know, like Councilmember Schoen had said, you know, along the water, that continues our redevelopment along the water that starts up by Cannery District, goes through downtown. You have Claremont Avenue, great access to the interstate. You have the university. You have, there's just so many things that, you know, I think that's really worth the 20-year, very patient effort to start assembling that. And when that's set to go, and I think the boundary along 37 could probably be adjusted a little bit more, but I think that's something that would very clearly be, you know, a regional benefit 50 years from now, you know, bigger than even potentially Phoenix Park downtown or River Prairie in Altoona. It's just has so many things going for it. So I think for new districts, that's my favorite. I think for a second district, I think an extension of a district, a smaller one, so the public can see that the RDA is making progress. I think there's going to be a lot of work on this where people are going to wonder, you know, what's the RDA doing? You're not going to have anything really visible occurring. But to have an area, either North Barstow, where you're finishing out what was started 30 years ago, or Cannery, where you're doing some of the same, the Cannery extension, you're doing some of the same neighborhood redevelopment that the broader district would have, but you're in a more compact area, so you can, it can be more visible instead of being lost in the masses of the city. So I think it's essential to keep a smaller extension going, just to keep the RDA relevant in the public and city council's eyes for future future requests, CIP requests or whatnot.
All right. Have we talked enough about that subject?
Yeah, I think it's a great direction.
Okay.
I think staff-wise, definitely going to look at this southwest quadrant, maybe reconfigure a map and look at surrounding areas outside of this 192 acres to look at the Menominee Street corridor, a little bit on Claremont, maybe reach over, not the whole Shopko Plaza area, but maybe a portion of that and do a deeper dive. And then based on comments, definitely do a deeper dive into the extension of the Cannery District West, do the same thing, look at map, look at blighted property, get information on that. And then also put a little bit of focus potentially on either the eastward or, more than likely based on Dave's comments, seems like the eastward extension of the North Barstow District as well, finishing that out.
Just leaning into the EPA, which is the next topic. Isn't the HVAC building in the Cannery extension part of that cleanup?
Correct, and we have identified that and submitted that to the EPA as one of our target properties, has come back approved as a potential use of the funds for that. And that was the one that the owner, it's been a couple years since, I think it's been 2 or 3 years since I've spoken with him, but at the time he said he was planning to retire in about 4 years, and that was, his is just a distribution center, so it's not the type of business that carries on to the next owner, because they're just buying from the wholesaler, sitting on it, and then shipping it to the end user. So it's a prime candidate for, we've actually submitted a CIP request for funding to purchase and remove that on a couple of occasions. So it's definitely on our target list.
who's speaking about the EPA? Jake, you or?
Yeah, I can just do a really, really quick overview of what we'll be doing next, what we bring forward for the expansion or extension two. Just a real quick update of what we'll be doing staff-wise, further conversations, and what it needs to actually bring forward. So when we develop a project plan, things that would go in there, like I mentioned earlier, would be a statement of boundaries of the project area, so the map showing the existing use and conditions of the real property, land use plans showed proposed for the area, information regarding the population density, land cover, building intensity or density, and after redevelopment, present the potential equalized value of the property tax proposed, statement of proposed changes to the zoning and building codes, if any, statement of additional public utilities required to support new land use, if any, and a statement of feasible methods to relocate families displaced from the project area. So just a couple more bullet points. The project plan should also include the definition of a blighted area. So we've gone over that a couple times, but make sure it applies to the redevelopment area that we're looking at. Draft and submit to the RDA and then to the City Council proposed resolution of a boundary change or a new district being created. A public hearing must be held before the RDA action of the resolution. The proposed resolution must first be approved by RDA and then City Council with at least a 2/3 affirmative vote. Following the approval, the plan should be certified to the city, after which the RDA may exercise the powers granted to it within the potential area. No further City Council action is needed to certify at that stage. And then kind of everything that we've seen and talked about this whole time. Obviously, a creation or extension of an RDA district is quite an overhaul. Hasn't happened in 35 plus years, so just moving through that process. So just make sure that we continue to follow all of the state statutes, working with the legal department, working with staff, and working with the RDA to make sure we can just continue to move this forward smoothly and efficiently. For EPA brownfields, there's been a couple comments about it so far. There will be a developer workshop that's being held at the library in the basement. Can't remember what the name of the area in the basement is, but in the basement of the library on December 2nd. Continue to look at different properties. Malden Avenue's been looked at and completed. Work's been done on the phase 1 of the Walters Brewery space, and other properties are currently being investigated as well, and moving through that process.
The developer meeting is intended to get developers to come in, learn about the program, and hopefully they'll also start submitting spaces that they of their own that they'd like to have incorporated into the EPA grant, and we can move forward on some of their suggested areas as well.
Is a dry cleaner building included in that?
We included that one.
Oh, okay.
Owner didn't bring it forward, but it is on the list,
All right.
yes.
Went over quite a few of the districts, going back to the Cannery District, continuing to work with Molding Partners now that the 90-day MOU extension was approved. Continuing to get interest in the Heights location from local developers. With that, since we have been holding off a little bit since we put it out last time, we'll look to resubmit that out to our developer list to see if there's any further interest now that interest rates have gone down a little bit. With the Kessler Park location, this month we're looking to promote that out to our developer list, as well as some LIHTC developers for that space, and gain some interest. We've had conversations here at the RDA in the past about density, about potential highest and best use for that location. By all accounts from staff, there will be a couple proposals for that space based on conversations that we've had. So as we receive those, we'd look to bring those forward to the RDA to have a conversation and then work towards entering into an MOU on that space.
I would like to make one comment. It was brought up in a council meeting during the public hearing session about an individual who's working on a project for Kessler Park, and the comment reference is that it's a done deal. Just want to, there were a few shocked looks in the audiences, a few heads whipped our way, and just want to specify that obviously it is not a done deal for this particular project. We have identified what parameters they need to meet, what information they are required, just like any other developer, to bring forward. And if they can pull the information together, we will present it to the RDA as a potential interested project in the Kessler Park location. It is a nonprofit, and it is, well, it's being structured as a nonprofit, and it is from someone who has no development experience and no financing. So we have also specified, as we've done on other properties, that they have to show 75% of their financing locked in by some type of guarantee, a guaranteed letter of credit, or something that actually contractually shows obligation of funding to go towards the project. But again, if all those metrics are met, we will bring that project forward to the RDA for review and potential interest moving forward. But just in case anybody here that I know our commission representative definitely was at the meeting when that was presented, so just wanted to kind of outline that it's, you haven't voted on anything and forgot about it. Just wanted to let you know about that.
I just want to quick jump in just to say, if you haven't at least driven by that, you can get a pretty good windshield view of the park. The weather's quickly finally changing here to winter, but I took a walk through it again yesterday. It is such a fantastic park. So, I mean, thanks so much to this group, to the community group that planned it, to our parks teams and engineering teams that have helped, design it along with our private contractors. It is a beautiful park. And, again, somebody who was doing enforcement work in that area on what used to be abandoned warehouses, people that were living there in unacceptable conditions, just heaps of garbage and so-called recycling that we were dealing with. I mean, that's what was in that space 10 to 20 years ago. It is a beautiful park and public space, an amazing just linear trail. The improvement from just the trail to the river is remarkable. Again, I mean, just a handful of years ago, walking through that space, trash, just people pushing stuff off the edge down into our riverways. It's been cleaned up. It's remarkable. I can't imagine when it starts actually being used as like a kayak and canoe, launch spot. But really neat. Our private developers have done an amazing job in that space. I mean, spaces that have already been active, like the Brewing Project and Eddy and Current, but also now the PNR project. So if you haven't actually, walked in front of that space, I mean, that is a beautiful looking big building that'll have 20%, affordability at 80% CMI for a brand new, amazing looking building. So not only are we building new, but we're building affordable. And obviously your decision, but honestly, I'd suggest that you look for something that maybe isn't as dense as PNR, but something that at least has moderate density. Because again, one of the issues that we run into is you spend this sort of time and money opening up space. It's a great space, and it's editorializing. Take it for what it's worth, but I think you do a disservice to not use that space to a medium to high density. There are a lot of people that are going to want to be near that wonderful park. So make sure you use those remaining spaces to let enough people be in those spaces, and you can do those at density and still accessibly with affordability on projects. So I don't know. I love North Barstow. I mean, it's a great spot. I know, I live down there with my wife, but the Cannery Park has exceeded all my expectations for a space. So it's a really neat new space in the community that, again, didn't displace really anyone from a residence. I mean, there were just a couple residents, and those have been more than replaced by the Cannery redevelopment that already is there of the Current and the Eddy being LIHTC housing. And all the rest was just unused space that is pretty remarkable already.
All right. In the back of the agenda was the 2025 meeting schedule, so make sure to get those on your calendar. Next meeting is December 18th. And if I could get a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.